What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I dropped 40 days, 40 nights?
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
Let's go!
Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days and Counting, where I, EJ Stewart, do 2 live shows per week. One Tuesday, 6 p.m., one Friday, 8 p.m., or rather 8 a.m. rather. And we're doing this show today. Different intro you heard there a little bit, because we've been having issues with X. I think some of the issues with X may be some copyright stuff. As of right now, I've not been thrown off X as of yet. So for the X crowd, happy to see. I know we've had a couple episodes where X has been throwing us off. I think I figured out the problem what it was, which was maybe some copyright issues with some movie clips that were used in my intro, which is why I was a little late on actually trying to know when my cue was to come on, because I took a couple things out. So good to be back on X. Streaming live, of course, as we always do on X. EG_Stewart, you find me there. Of course, streaming live as well on YouTube. New Generation Media, that is the hub, that is the centerpiece, that is the mothership of everything we do with our content, whether it's the sports stuff, whether it's the superhero stuff, whether it's the Star Wars stuff. Everything happening in New Generation Media. We're streaming live there on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. And of course, streaming live as well in a minute, because I didn't hit the button yet, but I'll hit the button right now. We are now also streaming live on Instagram. So shout out to the folks on Instagram. We are on IG Live. So thanks to the folks, obviously, who always try to rock with me on Instagram for these 40 days and counting shows. And of course, streaming live as well on Buzzer. If you have not already done so, please do me this favor. I know I always ask you guys a ton of favors I would like you guys to do, but this one I definitely need you to do. Make sure you head over to the Buzzer mobile app, BZZR. Search that in whatever app store you use. Download that app. Sign up, because this is a place you want to be. This is the future when it comes to sports content. We're doing all awesome original stuff happening there. Some of the best sports content creators in the world are part of this project that they've done a phenomenal job working on over with the team at Buzzer. I'm one of the folks that are on there. 40 Days and Counting is streaming live currently on Buzzer. I also do an NBA draft show on Buzzer with my brother Kendall Stewart. Of course, one of the three-headed monster that is New Generation Media. We do an NBA draft show, Difference Makers, Thursdays every day, every week at 6 p.m. live on Buzzer. That's a Buzzer exclusive show. So make sure you guys head over to Buzzer when you get a chance, because this is the place to be. And there's a ton of great content creators joining, and a lot of great fans who are getting what a lot of fans are asking for right now. No thrills, all sports. That's where you want to be. So we're streaming live on Buzzer. Very thankful to be a part of the Buzzer team, the Buzzer family. And this is going to be a show. I mean, when we started doing 40 days and 40 nights, I mentioned how this was a New York-centered show. Not a sports-centered show. It's a sports-centered show, which is ironic. I'm actually wearing an ESPN shirt today. Do not work at ESPN or have any affiliation in ESPN, but this was a gift, a wedding gift, or a bachelor party gift from my good friend Martin Torres. Shout out to him. This is my first time actually wearing the shirt, and so shout out to him. But I always mention this is a sports-centered show. It's supposed to be Sports Center, that to be confused with Sports Center, because there will be other elements beyond sports that happen to the show. It also is a show with a kind of a New York angle, or a New York POV. Not necessarily a New York show, but there are New York influences throughout. Did not think that I would be doing this show talking about the NBA Finals and the Knicks being part of it. So we're going to have a big conversation about what has happened with this New York Knicks team, as they have now punched their ticket to the NBA Finals. They sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we've done a ton of stuff talking about this on Orange and Blue Bloods, my Knicks podcast. We've done a ton of stuff talking about this on WFAN. Shout out to WFAN. Of course, I was on over the weekend. And we're going to do more here, because I think Knicks fans and NBA fans, I think, are still all in a state of shock at where the Knicks have placed themselves as a team that is playing the best basketball in the NBA, playing the best basketball they've played in their franchise history, and now are just 4 wins away from potentially winning an NBA championship. So we'll say everything we got to say about the New York Knicks. We'll also talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll spend a considerable amount of time on them as well, because whenever you have a team in the Final Four and one of them loses, we got to do a retrospective on kind of what happened and where did they go from here. Cavs, I think, are actually one of the more fascinating case studies heading into this offseason, because this series, this beatdown that they took, and this kind of weird road they had through this postseason really puts them, I think, squarely in the fork on the road. They can go one way or they can go another way. Neither way guarantees them a better shot to win a championship, but one of those ways certainly can guarantee them headed back towards irrelevancy very quickly if it doesn't go well. So I want to really break down what's happened with the Cavs. They already seem to have made a big decision today, so we'll get to that a little bit later. We also got to talk about the Western Conference Finals. There will be another game tonight, game number 5, crucial game 5 in a 2-2 series between the Spurs and the Thunder. Of course, those who will be listening to this podcast, by the time you listen to it, for those when we podcast the show, you probably would have seen who already won. So maybe not so much breaking down those teams and how that series is going to go, but looking ahead to, regardless of who wins game 5, which team has a better shot against the Knicks? Which team would be better suited to face this Knicks team the way they're currently constructed? I'm really fascinated to talk about that. We'll also get into a little bit what's happening, again, speaking about that New York slant that we have with this show. One of the big stories over the weekend was this situation with Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter, which has raised a lot of political tensions, which raised a lot of tensions overall about people's views on it. And, I mentioned a lot about it on the fan. I'll talk a little bit about it here as well. It seems like things are all good as of right now. It seems like those guys have whatever issues they had, they seem to have spoke about it. At least that's according to Abdul Carter. But that doesn't mean that the ripple effects of the incident happening the way it did may not have bigger ramifications moving forward. So we'll get to all that stuff, man. This is going to be a fun one. 40 days and counting. Once again, streaming live, multiple spots, including on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media, as well as streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Make sure you follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. If you're watching on there, make sure you follow me on Instagram. And, of course, streaming live on Buzzer, the BZZR app. Make sure you search that, sign up, and follow me there. EJ205 Prep is where you'll find me on Buzzer. Or just search your boy's name, EJ Stewart. So, Knicks, they advanced to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong buttons here. For the first time since 1999 here. And they did it in what is becoming historic fashion. This is not just a team that just, they advanced to the finals and they're winning these games. They are absolutely destroying teams. They have the highest point differential for any team over the course of an 11-game span in the NBA playoffs. They have an 11-game winning streak. They're one more win away from setting an NBA record for most consecutive wins in a postseason. They just beat the Cavaliers in a closeout game by 37 points. All of these closeout wins they've had have been at least 30-plus points or more. I mean, any number you want to talk about, we can talk about. You want to talk about the fact that they've had 6 games this year in the postseason where teams haven't scored 100 points. You want to talk about the blazing shooting that this team had. You want to talk about how this team had the most fast break points yesterday in any postseason game ever. Like, I mean, these are stats that you're reading them and you're hearing them and you're like, those can't be real. The fast break number was a number I saw that yesterday. I didn't believe that was real. Most fast break points ever in a playoff series, or a playoff game rather, the Knicks. That is what you're seeing from this team. And I think the way I kind of want to focus the conversation in this show, though they can go anywhere, and of course, jump in the comment section, let me know what you're thinking about with this Knicks run. I know they're playing Knicks fans who may be checking this show out. I think if you are one of those folks who had trepidation about how excited you should be about the Knicks, or how seriously you could take them, let's say if you're not excited because you're not a fan of them, how seriously you should be taken as a championship team, because you're like, as good as the team may be, the Western Conference has much better competition. The Western Conference has teams that have had much better regular seasons. The Western Conference has this and that. And the Knicks will maybe get out of the East, but once they get to the West, they're going to face a step up in competition, and you should not take them as seriously as whoever wins the Western Conference. I just think your head's in the sand. I think you're someone that's not paying attention to what's going on. I think you're somebody that is missing the forest through the trees of what is history that is happening. Jeff Van Gundy, who's, of course, assistant coach for the Los Angeles Clippers. He is a former Knicks head coach, obviously. He was the head coach the last time the Knicks went to the championship. Perhaps there's some bias there. I don't know. He's had a very weird relationship with the organization since he left. Hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows, for sure, in terms of how he's talked about the team. He mentioned it today. He thinks that they're the favorites. He thinks that they have to be the favorites how they're playing. And that is someone who coaches a team in the Western Conference. Someone who's coached against the Knicks this year and coached against the Spurs and coached against the Thunder. Those are the two teams that are still playing in the Western Conference. And he's telling you, based on what he has seen and how the Knicks are playing, that they are the best team. He says that right now they're the best team. They are playing the best. And what they're doing to opponents is so impressive that you have to look at them as the favorites moving forward. And I think the big takeaway from why I think that is not a crazy thing to say, because some people will feel like it is. You'll say, how could you say, regardless of how good the Knicks are playing, how could you not take in consideration that the Cavs, won 52 games this year. They beat a Sixers team that was in the play-in. The Hawks were a nice story, but this was a team that was basically below 500 at one point in the second half of the season. It's about the quality of play, I think, also combined with what is once again going to be a rest advantage for the Knicks. We know, regardless of how tonight's game goes between the Spurs and the Thunder, that is a series that's going to go at least 6 games. If you watch how close that series is, it's funny. I'm seeing some folks who are kind of, and I don't know if they're wishing, because I think most people think the Spurs are the better matchup for the Knicks, and they want the Spurs if you want to see the Knicks win the title. So I see people say, "Oh, it looks like the Spurs have kind of gotten the edge, and it's shifting that way." I don't know. Thunder are just they're legit, and I know they got some injuries and things don't look great, but I would not count them out at all. I think that is still a complete toss up. The series I would bet to go 7 games if you ask me how it's going to end up shaking out. I cannot wait for this game later tonight. But I think when you look at how that series is going and the war of attrition that's starting to take place with the various injuries, with the tired legs, I think you're starting to see a little bit from the Thunder. That looked like a tired team in Game 4. And it wasn't just a team that I think knew they got their split and they were ready to go home. I think they were like, oh, man, this team is so fast, so athletic. We've been through a lot here. It's a long track going from back to last year where you had 2 Game 7s in last year's playoffs, including a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. And now we're playing deep into May, about to be June again. Even though this trip to the conference finals has been easy, now because of the real step up in competition, you want to talk about a team that stepped up in competition. Playing the Lakers without Luka Doncic is like another world between playing against Victor Wembanyama and this Spurs team with all the athleticism they have. I think they're starting to feel a little worse for wear. So the reality is, with how the Knicks are playing, and it's not going to be some massive rest advantage because there's always a little bit of a break. Next games will be Wednesday for the NBA Finals. So there will be some time for even those teams to get whatever rest they need. Because let me see, I can look this up real quick in terms of how this series goes. I guess if they're playing every day, then in theory we'll have today, Thursday, and then Saturday. So you'll have Sunday into Wednesday. That's a pretty good amount of rest, even for a team that went through a 7-game series. But you still would have went through a tough 7-game series. Meanwhile, the Knicks would have just went through another sweep. Most of these games not really all that taxing on the body, or a lot of stress, or very stressful outside of Game 1 of these last several games that they've played. Game 1 meaning Game 1, of course, against Cleveland when they came back. So those are big advantages. I actually thought it was interesting. We'll hear from the Cavs side a little bit, but they didn't want to talk about the rest advantage, but they definitely seemed to want to allude to it as to why maybe their performance was so poor and why the Knicks were so energized. The Knicks, in terms of the offense that they're playing, that's something that's going to travel because it is something that is still new and unique and hard for teams to really stop. This is going to be another example, like I kind of mentioned in the last series, where there's more tape against the Knicks in terms of how they're playing the offense right now, but there's not a lot of tape in terms of how to stop it. I mentioned that they would have a big advantage for the against the Sixers because the reality was the Sixers got a short time to prepare for an offense that was brand new that they just watched the team have only success with using for 3 games. And then now this series, again, if you're the NBA finalists coming out of the West, now you got 7 games with this new offense. And still, very little success outside of the first 3 quarters of a game in Game 1 against the Cavs, where the strategy really was just to leave Josh Hart wide open, which is not really, it is a strategy, but it's not like a ace in the hole you can rely on if Josh Hart makes shots. So still not a lot of great solutions coming up from the other side of how to stop the Knicks right now offensively. And then their defense is certainly going to travel. I mean, the way the Knicks are playing, they're on a string. They are extremely well coached. They're scouting their opponents extremely well. It just feels like they know exactly where the rotations need to be. Their one-on-one matchups defensively, they know where to cut guys off. where not to foul, and those are things that are going to travel. It doesn't matter the opponent. Maybe the only thing that maybe you say maybe takes a step back because of the nature of the opponent is maybe shot making. Like, the reality is Victor Wembanyama is 7'5", so if you're shooting in the paint, the shots that may have been more comfortable are not going to be more comfortable. You're playing against the Thunder. We know their defense travels for sure. They have A-plus defenders everywhere. Okay, maybe some of these shots that you were getting that were a little open, maybe you're not getting quite as many good looks. But the process the Knicks are going through is still a winning process, offensively and defensively. And even if there's a little bit of slippage, even a little bit of slippage will be enough for them to survive because they're winning these games by 40 points. Like, okay, you slip a little bit. Okay, you win it by 15, 12. Like, a win's a win. You'll take it however it is. And these teams are going to have to take maybe what will be a slippage that they have not really had to endure playing against some of these other teams in the West that they may have to facing the Knicks. I mean, this is a time to buy in on what the Knicks are doing right now. They are every bit as legit and real as any of the teams playing right now in terms of who can win a championship. And I do think also what I think is great about this story is, number one, I think we're seeing how important it is to have a fan base and a market that is this invested in basketball, invested and present on what's now going to be an NBA final stage. The amount of engagement, social media traction, buzz that the New York Knicks have caused, not just in New York, but nationwide. We're seeing them take over cities all across, that east of the Mississippi in these games. That is great for the sport. That is great for the NBA. And what is also great for the NBA is, once again, for the anti-tank crowd, another example of a team that is not really here because of tanking. They have tried to tank, and it has not worked. They tried to put out bad rosters to clear cap space to sign guys, but that, whether it was tanking or just signing big-name free agents, none of those things were the way the Knicks got here. They got here through shrewd front office movements by Leon Rose, and you also got to give credit to the owner, James Dolan, who put them in a position to allow them to run this team. James Dolan, one of the biggest criticisms he's had is he's been somebody that's been way too involved. He has been somebody who is not a basketball expert, has tried to make his impact and presence felt in ways that maybe undercut his basketball experts within his front office. And in many ways, he has gotten in the way of the Knicks being successful as opposed to aiding them in their success. That is not what has happened during the Leon Rose run here. He gave them the runway to really build this thing up from the ground up. And even when they had setbacks, whether it was not getting the number one pick and getting Zion Williamson, whether it was the second year under Leon Rose after you make the playoffs, then missing the playoffs, there wasn't at any point James Dolan coming in, barging in, and putting his thumb on the scale in a massive way that would have changed the course of where the Knicks were going. The Knicks were able to stay the course of what they were doing, and they were able to make moves not by having a Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving or sign with them, or not a LeBron James bestow his presence on the organization. Player development, scouting, team building, cap flexibility, and cap maneuvering. Like, these are all. It shows you that, man. Like, you can build a champion not with just simply getting the number one pick in the draft. Like, your pathway to building a championship contender is not just to lose every game possible and hope that Victor Wembanyama falls on your lap. Is that an obvious pathway? Sure. Is it maybe the clearest pathway to maybe seeing something like that come through? Probably. Because how many players, the caliber of Jalen Brunson, when he signed, become all-time great players? It happens. It's not the first time this has happened where a guy who's kind of underheralded and then signs somewhere else and all of a sudden becomes a superstar or reaches another level. Like, I think about Steve Nash with the Mavericks. He was an all-star caliber player. And then when he gets to the Suns, right fit, right coach, right system, he becomes a Hall of Famer. He becomes one of the all-time great point guards, right? These things can happen with a guy going to the right fit, right team. But, like, signing a guy, Jalen Brunson, who had the right mindset, had the right leadership skills, had the right intangibles to raise his game to legendary levels. That is the reality of what he's become. He's become a New York Knicks legend as he's currently playing. Still alive, but no doubt a legend. I mean, just the front office deserves a lot of credit. And I'm curious. We think about this league and so much of professional sports. You're talking about teams that are gonna try to make copycat versions of other teams, and in many ways, the Knicks at times did some of that stuff. When it came to Celtics got Tatum and Brown, we see the success they have, and they go into the finals, they win championships. All right, to beat them or be on that level, maybe we can't get guys offensively that good, but at minimum, we have to be able to get guys who can guard those guys and negate a little bit of their impact on the game. We can't be undersized. We can't be small. We can't not be able to stack up to cover those guys for a 7-game series. And then they go and they get OG and they get Bridges. And there was, some people, praising the moves, but a lot of folks, especially because of 5 first-round picks being traded, being like, what are you doing trading 5 first-round picks? When it comes to OG Anunoby, what are you doing trading 2 young, homegrown first-round pick guys that became very good players on a playoff team for a guy who's not a non-all-star? They saw the forest through the trees of what this team needed in terms of championship pieces. I'm very curious if you'll see other teams do the same thing. The Knicks knew that premier wing defenders was gold. It's not something that was like a foreign concept, but maybe a few teams would have went the lengths the Knicks did to secure that aspect of this team. Those guys are signed long term. They re-signed Mikal Bridges long term. OG Anunoby signed long term. He's got 3 more years left on his deal. Like, these guys are going to be here. They're not going anywhere. Like, making the move for Karl-Anthony Towns was a move that a lot of people wouldn't have made. A lot of people were like, this guy's not a winner. This guy, he's too soft. He's too this, too that. They saw a role, not necessarily the person. They saw this guy is a stretch 5 with his offensive talent. That's a special trait that with our system, with our leadership that we have with a guy like Jalen Brunson, he's a guy that's going to help our team. I'm curious to see other teams maybe not just waiting to put all their eggs in the basket for a Giannis Antetokounmpo to want to become a trade bait, or for some other disgruntled star to say, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. Get me out of here. They showed that you don't have to wait for that. You don't have to wait for someone to be disgruntled. They don't have to sign them away or trade for somebody like Kevin Durant. You don't have to, again, clear your cap space and say, okay, we're just going to be really bad, but clear all our cap space and hope that somebody wants to come in through free agency. Something the Clippers have done, something the Knicks have done, something the Lakers have done, all these teams have done. You don't have to do that. And again, you don't have to say, okay, we're a small market team. You know what? Let's just tank. Let's just lose every game and hope that, we can draft the next phenom that becomes a superstar, and then we'll have the inside track to hopefully keep them here. Knicks have shown that there's another way to skin a cat, just like the Thunder showed last year. There's another way to skin a cat, right? Like, they didn't need to get the number 1 pick in the draft to build the team that they got. Obviously, Chet was number 2, but they were able to stack up draft picks, trade stars to get that draft capital, and then you saw the team say, "Oh, look what the Thunder did. Let's see if we can get up on those first round picks." Right? It just that's the beauty of sports. That's the beauty of basketball. It's the beauty of the NBA is there is no simple right answer to how to building a champion. But Knicks are showing that perhaps we gotta see. They have not won a championship yet, but perhaps some of the moves they made, other teams are gonna have to take note and be like, "Ooh, that's what they did. Maybe we gotta find our Jalen Brunson." What young player that maybe isn't in the right role right now, if he comes to us, could become a superstar, or our Karl-Anthony Towns? What star player that is not, that perhaps has been written off as a winner or written off as a character guy because of whatever issues they may have? What guy did we not see that maybe if we bring him into our system and we support him, maybe he can become a star player? Or rather become a star winner is a better way to put it. It's going to be important to see. And another thing I want to mention on the Knicks real quick before we move on to the Cavs. I think the other underestimated thing about this team is how many winners they have on this team. Like, there's the thought process that, this team, they don't have guys that have won championships, which is true. But they've also built a team of guys that we don't know who they are off the court, because in reality we don't know these people. We don't know celebrities, we don't know athletes. But given what we've heard, and the little that we do know, they have built a roster of high character guys. And they built a roster of guys who have won some things over the course of their career. These are not guys that have been on perennial losers for their entire career. Jalen Brunson, of course, won 2 national championships in college. He also, by the way, went to a conference finals playing for the Dallas Mavericks and helping spearhead that effort. I know we give a lot of credit to Luka Doncic. He's a superstar. We all understand that. Jalen Brunson was the guy that led them in that first series because Luka was hurt most of the time, and he was great the rest of the postseason. Jalen Brunson, winner. Josh Hart, won in college, winner. You want to talk about Mikal Bridges? This is not going to be his first finals appearance. He's played in the NBA Finals before. He played for the Phoenix Suns against the Milwaukee Bucks, and they lost, but he was an important piece to that championship run that the Suns were on right after the bubble in 2021. You want to talk about Jordan Clarkson? He's a guy that's been in the NBA Finals before. OG Anunoby didn't get to play because he was injured, but he was in the rotation and a piece on the Raptors before he got hurt for a team that won an NBA championship. So I say all that to say these are guys that have had some semblance of winning. All that criticism what you have for Karl-Anthony Towns, this is a guy that's now been to the conference finals 3 years in a row. Like, and that's another reason why when we talk about what's going to happen in this NBA championship, why, again, if you're going to start, downplaying the Knicks or not feeling they have an opportunity, I think you're missing the boat. Like, this is a team that has a high level of intangibles, high level of character, and guys who know what it takes to win. They have not won an NBA championship yet. That's the thing they're trying to find. But you don't know if you got it until you actually win it. But this is not a team of losers. It's not a team of guys that just put up numbers other places. No, these are guys that have won a ton. You talk about Karl-Anthony Towns, even the last 3 years. He also, by the way, only lost 2 college basketball games his entire career. Lost in the Final Four, but this is a guy who won a ton in college in the 1 year he was there. These are all winners, man. And it's surreal to see. It's surreal to see for a couple reasons, because it's the Knicks. It's an organization that I've said a ton, and I keep saying it. I think it's a perfect way to describe it. Is this an organization that not only do you have the fear or hope if you hate them, but the expectation that they're going to make life harder on themselves and fall short? And they're not doing that by any stretch of the imagination right now. And it's a franchise that has suffered through so many years of making wrong moves, bad decisions, not showing the amount of, fortitude it takes to become a winner. To see them doing all those things, it's going to continue to remain shocking to people, but it's still an awesome thing to see. Again, and I think it's also for the NBA, whether you hate them. There are plenty of people who hate Knicks fans who hate that they're getting to celebrate and do all they're going to do. But trust me, this is all good for basketball and all good for the NBA that this is happening. It's a likable group. May not like the fans, but I don't know how you can look at this team and say they're not a likable group. There's not a lot of guys. Towns is the only guy, like number one pick in the draft kind of guy, but he's a guy almost everybody wrote off. All these other guys, Brunson, second-round pick. Hart, second-round pick. Bridges got drafted by his hometown team, and then they traded him the night of the draft. A lot of guys who have had to deal with various different adversity. Nick Mitchell Robinson couldn't play college basketball. We can go down the line of all these guys. Jose Alvarado not drafted. Like, it's a special group, man. And it's going to be fun to see what they end up doing in the NBA Finals. So they advance. Again, just an absolute dominant, bludgeoning type of performance against the Cavaliers, winning by 37 points. This kind of leads to kind of what comes next for the Cavs. But I think it's a very interesting question to kind of observe and talk about here. So, the reports right now are that Kenny Atkinson will remain as Cavs head coach, despite being swept, despite what I thought was a really rough go during this conference finals. When I think about Game 1, where you have the infamous comeback or collapse or both, that's really what it was. It was both a collapse and a great comeback, where he doesn't call timeouts. He allows James Harden to play on an island guarding Jalen Brunson. Just a terrible, terrible night. And then a lot of the commentary beyond that game has all left you scratching your head. It was, James Harden's actually a great defender, and he's one of our best defenders. He's been one of the best playoff defenders. You're like, what? Analytically, we're actually up 2-1 in this series. It's a soundbite that's so crazy. I actually want to play it for you again, because I'm still dumbfounded that he said this. Oh, actually, I don't have it. Actually, I do have it, but I gotta look for it. Let me see if I can find this. Here we go. I want you guys to hear this from Kenny Atkinson, talking about where they stood after being down 3-0, headed into what ended up being the last game of their season.
Analytically, I think we've won the I said 3 out of 3. We're 2 out of 3 in the expected. I don't know if you guys follow that. There's an expected score, and we won 2 out of the 3. And I know you're looking confused, but
No, I'm not.
there is really, if you believe in process and all that, like, man, so, take that later.
I mean, what? I love that part, by the way, when we learned it was Zach Braziller, because we were like, who's that reporter? I looked at him as you should look at him, like he was insane, it was Zach Braziller of the New York Post. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. He's like, yeah, man, because what you're saying is crazy. Your team's getting embarrassed. And you're saying some saving grace about how this series is going is that analytically you're up 2-1, which is like, what the hell does that even mean? And the crazy thing is, like we said, like, if you're a basketball person or you know anything about shot quality and expected scores, like, we all know what he's talking about. I know some people have tried to defend, well, he was saying something that was actually real that they tracked. Yeah, I know that. Does not make it non-idiotic to say. It's not the thing you say when your team is losing, and it just speaks to some degree, what we've lost with the soul of how we talk about basketball, and how basketball's being coached, quite frankly. There's no soul in that statement. There's no soul in, well, our team is getting embarrassed and punked, and we choked game 1, but the process is good. And it's because of what the analytical numbers tell us, and that is just gross. And let me be clear, I am not an anti-analytic guy ever. Anybody who knows, who's watched my coverage, whether it's been about the Knicks, whether it's been about the NBA, whether it's been about the NBA draft, where I really like to hammer analytic numbers. I think it is important when we talk about these players, especially so many of them, where there's only so much film you can watch on each player in scouting. But that was insane. And I do think it feels like it speaks to something that's just rotten about that team and about that core and just about just the culture that has been established there. It is a culture of losers. It's crazy for a team that has won so much, but when it comes to winning things of importance or coming up the biggest when things are the toughest, there's not a team that I would feel any more sure that they're going to come up small than this group, where you got a coach when you're down 0-3 telling this team the process is good because they're down, and then they're up 2-1. I mean, then you had this from James Harden, who he was asked about kind of what happened in this series and, how do you assess this team after the ass kicking you took. And he thinks they're still better than the Knicks.
Yeah, it was 4-0, but I don't think we had a chance as far as our best shot. From a standpoint of the circumstances. Obviously they dominated us 4-0, but I don't know if I can necessarily answer that question. Just because genuinely I do feel like we are the better team, but series wise, it didn't show it. So it's a tough question to answer.
That quote, that quote and the second quote I'm going to play you. Is everything wrong with James Harden as a sports figure? And as someone who I have defended him many times in his career, not necessarily defending the loser aspects of his game or his career, but like trying to put in proper context his entire career, because this kind of nonsense is a massive part of it, but so is the 50-point triple-doubles, leading league in scoring, MVPs, MVP finalist appearances. Like, he's legitimately one of the greatest players of all time, which makes him such an odd figure. Because you can play this series, you get embarrassed, you get smoked, you get dominated, and there isn't any real self-reflection about how you have to improve as a team. It is the idea that, no, we are actually still better, and that it was circumstances that allowed them to get swept, not how they played. You have to assume those circumstances are, I assume he's talking about the fact that they had all these game 7s that they had to play and they were tired coming into this series. Again, something that they tried to avoid talking about, but they kind of would allude to every now and then. Donovan Mitchell seemed to be the only guy that was not trying to hear anything about fatigue. The circumstances are why we got swept, not how I played, not how we got out hustled, not how we got out schemed. It's insane, man. And you got to hear this, because not only is he saying that the Knicks are not a better team than the Cavs despite getting swept by them, he also says he thinks he did pretty well this postseason.
I think I did pretty good, you know. Like I don't grade myself off shot making. You know, I think coming here was just a piece to fulfill whatever needs to be fulfilled, and you know, defensively being extremely solid, offensively, you know, getting guy shots and fitting into a system that was already in place.
You notice how none of those things he's talking about were winning. I played pretty good. Individually, I was solid defensively, which I'm like, I don't know how you can say that, but okay. Again, delusion. Getting guys open shots, fitting into a role. I don't judge shot making, because that would involve actually, you know, looking at the score and seeing which team has more points than the other. So that part of it, we're not going to judge that. That's not a part to be judged. That doesn't in any way reflect how well a game is being played. And I agree with the notion, and something that Tom Thibodeau, former coach of the Knicks, used to always say. I think it's true that you don't have to shoot well to play well, but I think there's something wrong with a star player and a Hall of Fame talent like James Harden to reflect on a situation where you go to a team with the hopes of winning a championship and you get swept and you play terribly in the Eastern Conference Finals. He can't say he played well. This was awful. Unless he just thinks he's not that good, which I don't know. I don't know what to make of him. But, like, he played terribly throughout the Eastern Conference Finals. He had good moments in the playoffs for sure, but at the end of the day, he fell short. To these comments about, I played pretty well, I got guys good shots, and I did my part, you know, fitting in a role that they gave me. I'm like, well, okay, but did you win? He doesn't seem like broken up that they lost. He just seems like he's like, well, I don't know. I clocked in. I'm getting my checks coming in on the 15th and the 1st, so I guess I'm good. And I would never want this guy on my team. I would never. There are so many guys that to me have exposed themselves to me for what they are, which are just not championship characters, right? And I had this out from Joel Embiid. I don't know if I still have it. But, you know, Joel Embiid, and I'm sensitive to the fact that he was talking about his health, because at the end of the day, like, health is a big thing. But remember this sound from Joel Embiid? This was after they got smacked by the Knicks and they got swept, and the arena was taken over by Knicks fans. This is what he wanted to say in terms of how he felt the season went.
I know we lost, you know, and I know that's not the right mentality to have. But, you know, for me, this was a success. I came into this year not knowing where I was going to be, you know, how long I was going to play, if I was even going to play based on how the knee was the last few years. And
I mean, this was a success. These are just not championship people. These are not serious people. And the guys who win championships, the guys that we talk about, like, I think about the guys that have won and how devastated they've been when they've lost. I think about Giannis, and remember him walking out of the press conference when Malika Andrews was asking him about his future in Milwaukee. Thinking about Jalen Brunson, you know, after the Knicks had all those injuries. He was asked, like, you know, and I know you guys had all these injuries, but, like, you know, do you feel good about how this postseason went for you and the team? And he's like, did we win a championship? Did we get close? Then no, this was a failure. Like, those guys, the desperation with which those guys, and I know you can say, okay, press conference, what's the big deal? I don't know. Like, for that to be the raw emotion right after you lose, just, don't give me press conference don't matter. That tells me a lot. And they're gonna bring this guy back in James Harden. This isn't like he's coming back. This is going to Brian Windhorst. You can hear Brian Windhorst here because, you know, the big question that everybody will have is, you know, what happens to this team? Do you end up blowing it up? Brian Windhorst thinks there could be other changes that may come, but don't expect it to be James Harden.
They are a second apron team. So what I believe their plan is going to be is that James Harden is going to opt out of his contract and he's going to sign a new contract. This is not theoretical. James Harden will be back with the Cavs next year, and it will be for multiple years guaranteed. It's going to take them out of the second apron, okay? Once you're out of the second apron, half of your handcuffs come off. You can now you can do more business again. Do you want to go forward with the core in place? You say re-sign Dean Wade, re-sign Keon Ellis, say we need a full training camp with James Harden, but that's a pathway.
Correct.
And that's going to be under consideration.
I mean, yeah, maybe we'll see about Dean Wade and those other guys, but he said James Harden's going to be back on the team. He's going to be re-signed, and he's going to be back for multiple years. And part of that, what Windhorst wanted to explain there, was because him opting out, which means they would either resign him for less money, which would let him get them under the apron. But you just heard James Harden. Is that a guy that you feel confident in, that he's going to dig deep or look within in terms of his issues or his flaws as to why they didn't get it done? This guy has been failing at the highest of levels in terms of getting to winning a championship or getting to an NBA championship. He's only done it once with the Thunder. And he still has his disposition. Again, it's as if it doesn't break him up at all that they lost. I don't know what you do with this Cavs team. I think Kenny Atkinson absolutely could have been a fire candidate after this series. He was so terrible. His team looks so overmatched. I almost think he's getting saved because of how great just the Knicks have played throughout the playoffs. Like, they've been killing everyone. So I think that the Cavs are going to say, listen, it really wasn't Kenny's fault. Like, at the end of the day, like, the Knicks have just been dominant, and this was probably going to happen regardless. But the one difference between this series and the Sixers series and what happened in the last 3 games against Atlanta is the Cavs actually have a highly competitive, dominant performance within one of those games. There was one game where they were dominating the Knicks, and they lost it because of this head coach. And yet, they're going to stay in pat, which I think goes to, the reason why, again, I got a lot of respect for Leon Rose, because the Knicks were basically not in the exact same position because they didn't get smashed by the Cavs, by the Pacers last year, but they were in a similar position, and they said, this guy is not going to get the guy to get us over the top. This guy's not the guy to get us over the top. We need to look elsewhere. And they made a bold move. They got criticized for it because how you fire a guy to get you to these conference finals, and now they're in the NBA finals. Dan Gilbert's a guy who I would consider a bold leader. Like, he's not someone who's been afraid of making big decisions. He just had them trade for James Harden, which is that is the biggest roll of the dice any team can make for someone that's trying to win a championship, is to say that we need to add the guy who just said that he played great after getting swept, and that the team is actually the better team despite being swept, and only circumstances was why they lost. So we know Dan Gilbert's not afraid to roll the dice. A little surprising that he didn't really consider moving on from the head coach, and it doesn't sound there's going to be much consideration for moving on from James Harden. But this is what they're deciding, which then leads to, okay, well, what else happens with this team? Because it can't just be this. Like, this team, this nucleus, this era of Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley. I mean, in theory, Mobley be a year older. There's another year of experience this team would have together. But, I mean, have we really seen anything to make us think that this team is... I mean, I'll put the line at getting to the NBA Finals, but I really think at this point you have to ask about winning a championship. Forget about just getting to the finals. Like, is that team really winning a championship? That doesn't look like a team that's close to winning a championship, and Dan Gilbert said that. Which means that, once again, Brian Windhorst, but the previous soundbite you heard from Brian was actually from ESPN Radio New York. This sound you're going to hear here is from, I believe this was NBA Today, talking about where things stand with the Cavs and the tough decision they may have to make with Mobley and looking perhaps further west in the Midwest to find their answer.
Even if they want to keep this roster together, which I frankly don't expect, I expect them to make some significant changes to it. They have some free agents they need to sign, their own free agents. Dean Wade, for example, started the bulk of this blast as a free agent. So, but I expect the Cavs to be mulling over. Like, I don't think you will be long before you start to hear Cavs attached to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Would they consider entering that market? If they put Evan Mobley on the table, as hard as that would be, Evan Mobley is in his mid-20s. When they drafted Evan Mobley, okay, they drafted him to be another Giannis. What if they could turn him into Giannis with Harden and Donovan Mitchell on the roster? They have not crossed that bridge yet, but that is something that they may have to consider.
I mean, I think if you're the Cavs, almost any bold idea is probably the right move. I mentioned earlier, they have the fork of the road. They can either stand pat, and it's really not even a fork. There's actually 3 options. You stand pat, bring back Harden, and then maybe bring back Wade and Keanu Ellis. Okay, let's go a full training camp, full off season, and let's see if we can do that. That is just, again, I feel very lucky, and it's rare I've said this. Well, I don't say rare. I've always felt lucky being a Knicks fan because the community is so amazing. The team hasn't necessarily always made me feel very lucky. But today I feel lucky on all fronts for the amazing community and also for how the team's been built and how they're playing. I feel very lucky to be a Knicks fan in comparison to other teams, particularly the Cavs. Like, if I had to sit through what I just watched, that sweep, and then come into next year with that same loser group together and the same head coach, I don't know if I would be invested because I'm a huge sports fan, huge basketball fan, but I just don't know if I could drive myself crazy over, like, hoping that this team's actually going to do anything of significance. I would just assume that they'll get to the playoffs. They'll probably win a round because that's kind of what they've typically done, unless they see the Knicks when they lost in the first round. But anything beyond that of any real significance is not happening. Could they win a second series? Sure, but if they're facing somebody that's on the pathway to going to the finals, they definitely ain't winning that. That's what we've seen. They lost to the Pacers last year. They lost to the Knicks this year. Like, they're not at that level. So if they're gonna just think, oh, we can just run it back with these same guys, that seems it's silly. But that's something that's on the table. Then there's the other path that is, okay, we don't re-sign those other guys. We keep Harden, but then we go for some other big fish to add to this nucleus. And Giannis is certainly going to be one guy that's going to be considered, and when it comes to maybe trading Evan Mobley, I gotta give props to my dad on this one too. Shout out to my dad. I talked to him right before the show, and I always talk about him a lot on these shows. I talk about everybody important in my life on these shows. I talk about Andrea a ton. I talk about both of my parents, my mom, my dad, and this is when the Knicks were playing the Cavs in the first round, like, of 2023. And he was like, Mobley's not it. And I thought that was harsh. I was like, he's a second-year player. The guy had a great second year. He had a great season for the Cavs. I was like, you can't say he's just not it at this point in his career. He's too young. I mean, he didn't have a good series. None of their bigs had a good series. That whole team didn't have a good series. They don't play well against the Knicks. The Knicks have destroyed them in the postseason. But I thought that was harsh. I've now seen Evan Mobley, not just against the Knicks, now against other teams too, and seen him over the course of this stretch. And he's a good player, and he's an all-star player, and he's a very good defensive player. For a number 3 pick in the draft, a guy who you thought maybe, as Brian Hinor said, there was this, like, thought process that he was going to develop into a superstar. That is not going to happen. That, I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. And if I'm wrong, clip it and tell me I'm wrong, and I will gladly shut up and say I was dead wrong on Evan Mobley. Superstar? No. Can he be an all-star? Can he be the guy that's a good defensive player, a guy who maybe in a different situation with different leadership, different guys around him, maybe he is a championship piece somewhere else? Maybe he is. It is not happening in Cleveland. It's not. Not happening next to Donovan Mitchell. Damn sure ain't happening next to James Harden. It's not happening under his head coach. So if I were the Cavs and I was a Cavs fan, considering what I've seen from this nucleus that I don't think is going to change much, I would absolutely trade Evan Mobley in a package for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I absolutely would. I think it's worth the risk. I'd much rather take that risk, and if Giannis shows that he's taking steps back, if it shows he's too injury prone at this point in his career, if it ends up just not working out, at least you say, you know what, I went for it. We drafted guy number 3. He was a very good player for us. He took us far. He took us about as far as we thought we can go. We cashed him in for a Hall of Fame player who still could play. Giannis, there isn't anything really about his game that has taken a step back. He's still, I think when he's healthy, still arguably a top 5 player in the NBA. The team is awful around him, and he's not available enough. Those are the two things. One thing, both are kind of not really in his control. One you solve because the Cavs are much better than the Bucks. The other one is more of like a luck deal, but then you kind of get wary. Like, you hope it's not wear and tear, older age, because he's someone that has put his body through a lot. But I would make that plunge. I would do it. Now the question I would have though is, does Giannis want to go to Cleveland? The crazy thing about the Giannis thing is we don't really know what he wants of all this. This entire situation is, The only thing we kind of have some idea of is it seems like if he were to be traded, he would like to go to the Knicks. But even that has seemed to be debated or contested at times in terms of what exactly he does want. But that seems to be the only thing we could really lock in. Okay, if he does get traded, not that we know for a fact he does want to be traded because he kind of goes back and forth. But if he were, he will be okay with going to this team. We don't really know if he'd be okay going anywhere else. I mean, the Cavs are a very good team. Does he want to go to Cleveland? Again, we don't know. I don't know if this is a thing where he wants to live in a city that is metropolitan and a bigger market. Like, I don't know those things he wants. I don't know if weather is a factor. Would he want to stay in the Midwest in another cold weather city? I don't know what these factors are because he's not really doing the thing we need him to do, which is to go down the road with what the hell he actually wants. So we're kind of doing a lot of guessing with what to expect from him and what we should think about his pathway out of Milwaukee. So that's the big question I have is, will he want to be traded to Cleveland? There's never been an athlete that I can remember outside Deshaun Watson who only pushed for Cleveland after they told him, we'll give you guaranteed money fully. He actually literally took Cleveland off of his list. When the teams that were trying to trade for him, he was like, I'm not going there. And they're like, what if we gave you a fully guaranteed $200 million contract? Whoa, fully guaranteed? Okay, come back. We can make this happen. That's the difference. That's one thing we can fix. I'll go there. Besides him, if you're in the chat, if you're watching, can you name me a player that forced his way to Cleveland, that really wanted to go to Cleveland? Guys have been traded there. Donovan Mitchell was traded there. Kevin Love was traded there. Those guys had not demanded trades, and they didn't target Cleveland. They just kind of landed there. And that's the Cavs in terms of their history. If you talk about even sports history, there aren't, again, I mentioned Deshaun Watson. I can't really think of too many other guys when I mean superstars. Don't give me like some like average guy who signed a big contract because this was the place I played in the most. I mean like superstar guys, like a Deshaun Watson, like a Kevin Love, like Donovan Mitchell, like someone of that caliber. Has anybody ever said, yes, I want to go to Cleveland, take me there, beyond LeBron James, who's signed there and he's from there? It doesn't really happen, and we don't see it in this like player movement era where players are like making the list and Cleveland's on there. It just doesn't really work that way. So I have doubts that they could make a Giannis thing happen because of that. Now the Bucks may not care, and that becomes a big thing. Is do the Bucks say, you know what, to hell with you and what your goals are and dreams are? Like, the Heat don't have a package as good as the Cavs that includes Evan Mobley. The whoever other team, the Orlando Magic don't have a good package as this team does that includes Evan Mobley. So we're just gonna send you there. That's something that they could do, and if that happens, then it may not matter, and Giannis will be a Cav, and we'll have to see how that goes. But I do think that I'm on the Cavs, I'm 100% being like, here's Giannis. They don't have the greatest draft pick thing going for them because they traded 3 firsts for Donovan Mitchell. So I know some of them have already gone to Utah, but I don't know exactly what their future draft pick thing is. They have some in the coffers, but not a ton. So that's going to be something to follow with Giannis. The other big piece for the Cavs situation is about the potential pending free agency of the King. Because LeBron James also has a big decision, and he also has been linked to the Cavs for a potential return in his farewell to the NBA. Here was Brian Windhorst. This was on Get Up from ESPN, talking about the decision LeBron has and what may be factors that either allow him to stay in LA or go to Cleveland.
He's going to have to decide whether he wants to be a Laker, and the Lakers are going to have to decide how much they're going to offer him in the next 2 or 3 weeks. He has a $58 million cap hold. The Lakers have to deal with that. If he remains a Laker, this is all going to be moot. And I do think that despite, what they might posture that would be basically negotiating, I do think there's a pathway for him to stay in LA. But if it is not, and if the Lakers want to use that cap space elsewhere, then there will be things open for LeBron. But I still have never heard LeBron say he's willing to take a very small contract. If he does say that, we'll be glad to report on that. But I have yet to hear that, and that's kind of where the dreams in Cleveland kind of die right now.
That last part makes it sound unlikely. And Brian Windhorst has, at times, and to be clear and fair to Windhorst, whenever he's talked about the LeBron, the Cavs stuff, he's always prefaced it by saying, will LeBron take less money? Because I think the reality is he's going to have to sign for either the veteran minimum or the mid-level exception if the Cavs are under the aprons to whatever they will be allowed to be able to bring him in. They don't have the money in terms of cap space to sign him. LeBron has not taken a pay cut since he went to Miami. That was the last time he took a pay cut. Ever since then, he's taken basically the max of what a team could offer. I don't think that this is the time where, if championship is your goal, that should be the most important thing for him. But he's also won 4 championships, and he seems to be a guy that is content with his place in NBA history. So the ring chasing thing, he will ring chase. I think if there's an opportunity, I think he will play for a team that can win a championship. I think he wants to play for something. That's a big part of the situation with the Lakers is, like, what is this thing? Like, are we actually trying to win a championship in this last year or two that I'm here, or are we just like biding time till I'm gone, and then you're gonna make your moves to try to win a championship around Luka? Which it seems like it's that. It seems like it's the latter. It seems like it's like, you're still here, okay? Well, hang out for another year, but once you're gone, your $50 million, whatever it is, comes off the books. Trust us with that. We're gonna go all in on like really trying to build this team up around Luka so we can try to win a championship. So he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. He wants that $50 million that he would come to him and he probably deserves. It probably is most likely to come in LA. It's just not going to come from Cleveland. They don't have a mechanism to do that unless, could Cleveland start a conversation on a trade where, and again, now we're getting into salary cap rules. Apologies, I don't have those salary cap rules in my purview. Are they able to, are they an opt-in trade or a sign-in trade possible even for Cavs? I don't know. I mean, Windhorst basically said he doesn't sign for less money. It's over. But could you start a conversation that started with Jared Allen and some of those other pieces on the team for LeBron James? Would the Lakers bite on that? The Lakers definitely need a center. Jared Allen would be a massive upgrade over DeAndre Ayton. I think if you're the Lakers, I think, you're like, I need some picks. I need something. I'm trading you the greatest player of all time, arguably, even if he's 40-something years old. I don't know. I'm very fascinated to see what the Cavs do, but it's a group that definitely I think needs to perhaps move on. And that third prong of this fork in the road for them, by the way, before we move on, is what's happening with Donovan Mitchell. Like, they've not done this Donovan Mitchell thing for a while. Like, we've actually not seen this kind of Donovan Mitchell thing in action now in 2 different spots. Seems kind of like your season ends the same, kind of regardless of the circumstances. Is you'll have very good regular seasons. You'll have moments where he looks like an MVP candidate. You'll even have moments maybe within a playoffs where you're like, oh wow, we can do something really special maybe. But it's always going to end in bitter disappointment where you're not even close to winning a championship. Like you'll get to even if you get to the conference finals, you still won't be close to winning a championship. Donovan Mitchell has an opportunity to sign an extension. It's been very weird that he hasn't really been open about like saying I will sign here, and it seems like he's kind of been hedging when Cleveland's asked him about whether he would sign here after this game they lost. He basically said, I love Cleveland. I don't know how to say it. Like, I want to be here. So maybe that's him saying, listen, after what happened just now, the only chance I ever have of seeing this money again is Cleveland. So maybe that's what he's doing here. But I want to see him sign that extension before I'm convinced that he wants to just stay there. Because he also has to look at the team around him, too. He has to look at it and say, yo, like, what is this thing? Like, I didn't want to be here. You guys got me. I mean, I'm watching Evan Mobley and Allen shrink again in the playoffs. My coach is saying that we're saying idiotic things. We're up 2-1 analytically. The guy that got me as a running man, that got rid of the star point guard that was next to me is James Harden. Look what he just did. Like, if I was Donovan Mitchell, I wouldn't want to be a part of this, to be honest. He may not have the leverage to really do that right now because he is also a part of the problem. Like the reality is he is the leader of this team. You saw him in that huddle going off and nobody's paying attention to him. We saw some of his limitations as a player, both defensively and then offensively when he lost his legs. So he's right with the rest of these guys in terms of the loser mentality that has infected this entire roster. So maybe he doesn't have the leg to stand on to be like, trade me or else. Maybe they're like, what team that's trying to win a championship is going to want to trade for you after what we've seen from you? That's something that he may have, and he may just say, you know what, it might be better off just to secure that max bag super max money and just move on, even if it means you're committing to Cleveland. So that's the other part of this. Is there a possibility you trade Donovan Mitchell? You know, it doesn't really make sense to trade Donovan Mitchell to Milwaukee, I think. You know, but is there a situation where maybe you're trading Donovan Mitchell in a 3-team trade? Where maybe we're talking about trading Evan Mobley. Do you say, no, let's trade Mitchell and let's put him in a deal and send him somewhere else and find a way to get back to Giannis, and then we trade Mobley somewhere else? I would say for the Cavs, again, only if I'm Dan Gilbert and I'm talking to Kobe Altman, I'm talking to that front office, I'd be like, only bring bold ideas to my table. None of these ideas I want to hear are run it back. Let's see if we get a good training camp. I do not want to hear that. I want to hear we're gonna NBA 2K this thing. This is a team that needs it. This is a team that I would be, again, as aggressive and as bold as possible because you don't have anything to lose. The reality is, if you stay pat, you're gonna see the same result the next 3 years anyway. You're gonna go to the playoffs, lose in the second round of the conference finals, and that's gonna be it. Maybe you'll luck into the NBA finals. You're gonna get killed by somebody in the West. That's what's gonna happen. So at this point, if we know that's the reality, then why not? Let's just get crazy. Let's get interesting. And worst comes to worst, make a couple of wrong moves, and we gotta blow this thing up. Then we blow it up. But it should, in my opinion, only be bold decision moving forward for the Cavs. Very fascinating to see where that ends up shaking out. So obviously, you got the Western Conference Finals tonight. This is Game 5 between the Knicks, between the Spurs and the Thunder. Knicks will get the winner. Again, games coming up. For those who maybe end up listening to this episode of the podcast, I don't want to harp too much on the game that has already been played. If you ask me who I think wins tonight, I still lean Thunder. I think the Thunder know if they lose this series, I won't say over, but it gets real hard. I think if they lose this game at home, with all the injuries and the wear and tear that they've taken, if they have to then take the very short flight, which is probably like a half hour from Oklahoma City back to San Antonio, but they had to get on that plane, get back to San Antonio, with the Spurs with an opportunity to close out with how insane that building's going to be, the energy that team's going to play with, and that you'd have to match. That might be a lot, even for the Thunder. So I think they know this is it's not a win or go home situation, but it is as close as you can get to that. I feel like with the Spurs, they lose, they could easily win a Game 6. Easily is harsh, but you know what I mean. Like they could win a Game 6 at home with their season on the line. With the Thunder now knowing, okay, listen, if we lose this one, we still got one in the tank. We can go back to home for Game 7 and lay it all on the line there. So I think because of that, I lean Thunder here. But there are some real reasons, I think, to be a little concerned about the Thunder with the last performance that they had. I still didn't really love, and Shea's awesome, and Shea will find a way to bounce back. But we've seen these games in the postseason where he's not quite as, at least this postseason, where he's not quite as dominant offensively as he is in the regular season, and the refereeing, credit to the refs. I feel like I watch these games and he's just not getting these calls. In the regular season, they're calling fouls. They're light contact, they're soft contact, but he's not getting these huge whistles that are allowing him to live on the line. He's only had one game in this postseason series against the Spurs where he went to the free throw line at least 10 times. I think in terms of his average, I think he probably averages about 8 or 9 free throws a game. 9. He averages 9 per game. He's not reached double digits only in any game except for Game 3. That was the game that they won in San Antonio. He went to the line 12 times in that game. Every other game was 9 in the first game, which is right at his average. And that was in an overtime game. A double overtime game. 9. 6 in Game 2. They won, but it was only 6. And in the last game, he only got to the line 7 times. So, I think the Thunder have done a very good job in terms of scouting him. And I think that the refs are just not. They're just allowing more contact. They're just not allowing. They're not going to allow him to just live the field unless the Spurs commit more fouls, since they play more physical. They've given the Spurs a line that they can play at, and Shea he's not been comfortable. He's averaging 25 points a game, shooting 39% from the field. This is not Shea Gilgeous-Alexander kind of play. So that concerns me a little bit. And the reality is, like, for against this team, maybe against the Suns, maybe against the Lakers, those other teams, you don't have Williams, you miss Mitchell in the game. Like, this team can overcome it. They're so damn deep. I don't know against the Spurs that you can survive definitely both guys being out, Mitchell and Williams. Maybe you can survive without Williams, maybe. But as we've seen with the Spurs, man, they're a real threat, and they're playing great. And for as good as they are defensively, because Victor Wembanyama is a cheat code, you need all your answers offensively. You need all of your potential solutions to what the Spurs bring in order to be able to consistently score. We saw they were able to score in Game 3 because you got a great Jared McCain game. But once you get to Game 4, Jared McCain struggles shooting from the floor because he's not going to make every single shot like he's been doing for most of this postseason. And now your offense looks extremely ordinary. That's what they look like. And tired. So, can't wait for this one. I think when we think about, though, moving away from just Game 5, how we talk about these two teams and where they stack up, Knicks waiting in the wings for an NBA Finals matchup, which team would be better equipped to beat the Knicks in the NBA Finals? I'll tell you what, all year, I've said, I think the Knicks, if they face anyone else in a 7-game series, can win. And I would actually probably pick them to win. That's why I had the Knicks winning the NBA championship before the season started. I had them playing the Denver Nuggets again in the playoffs and winning the NBA title because I felt like if the Thunder, if they matched against the Nuggets and they're a great match with Nuggets, they'd win it all. I've always said there's one team that would extremely worry me, and I'm not sure the Knicks can overcome, and that was the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm really starting to move off of that right now, guys. I'm being real. I'm really starting to move off of the concept that if they have to face the Thunder, that they would be so badly outmatched. I've mentioned it earlier in the show. And again, there's things I'm seeing from the Thunder I think make them look very vulnerable. Number one, I think that they're tired. Jalen Williams, I don't think Jalen Williams is going to really be a factor the rest of this postseason, if I'm being real. I think we know how serious hamstring injuries are. Clearly, he's had issues with his lower leg that probably won't really be solved without like an off-season worth of rest and recovery and rehab and all those things. So even if he plays, I just think you're probably looking at a guy who's going to be bouncing in and out of the lineup or only giving you spurts of what he typically brings in terms of his impact. And he's an all-star player. Jalen Williams is a star. I think the Knicks are playing a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander-led Thunder that doesn't have Williams and may have Mitchell hobbled. I mean, I think the Knicks have a great shot against them. I really do. I'm really starting to talk myself into maybe the Knicks would be better off facing a hobbled, beaten-up Thunder team that had just went through a war against the Spurs rather than a Spurs team that, even if the Knicks will have such a huge advantage when it comes to experience and knowledge and postseason pedigree, would forget about 7-game series. I know Fox has been banged up. They're so young. Like, I don't think they have a problem with fatigue. I don't think that would be a problem for them. They will figure out a way to get rested and get out there and play because they got such young legs. They don't have guys that have taken the wear and tear that the Thunder have. So the Knicks, I don't think the rest of the would mean as much. Where I think it will mean a ton if it was the Thunder coming out of a 6 or 7 game series. So I'm actually starting to lean that maybe if you're rooting for the Knicks, you prefer to play the Thunder, just given the version of the Thunder we're seeing. Now, if you tell me, listen, Jalen Williams, he's actually not that hurt. The Thunder they really feel confident in how they're playing this, and they feel like, they want to get him ready for the NBA Finals. They think they're going to win these 2 games. If he had to play, he could play. If you're telling me that situation, then that's different. If you're telling me AJ Mitchell's going to be fine, that's different. I just don't know. And with that uncertainty, it makes me intrigued by the idea of the Knicks facing a hobbled Thunder team. And it's making me flip kind of how I felt for much of the season, which that if the Knicks see the Thunder, that'd be the one team I'd be extremely concerned about. I don't have that same extreme concern. The Knicks will probably have, which is crazy to say, a depth advantage over the Thunder, considering the Thunder have all these injuries. But no one has a depth advantage over the Thunder anymore. But you consider the Knicks starting 5, and then that Landry Shamet is shooting like 90% from the 3-point line, and Deuce McBride is Deuce, and Mitchell Robinson, like they got a solid 8 guys. And then you throw in Jose Alvarado, struggling earlier in the series, was awesome in Game 4. They got a very solid 8, and when they're playing right, they have 9 guys potentially playing at a very high level. That, I don't think the Thunder have that. With the injuries, they don't at this point. So I don't know. I'm very curious about what you would think. Who do you think would be a better matchup for the Knicks? You could leave me a comment in the comment section if you want to give me your thoughts on that, but I can't wait to see how this rest of this NBA playoff shakes out, man. One thing I will say, man, before we get to our last story today, seeing this as breaking news, and I want to be very careful because these are all very developing situations, but a developing situation out of the NFL. I'm reading here that Packers star running back Josh Jacobs, he was arrested earlier today, and he is being charged with domestic violence. This is according to ESPN. Jacobs was booked on charges of battery, including domestic abuse, criminal damage to property, domestic abuse, disorderly conduct, and intimidation of a victim. And that disorderly conduct they put in parentheses domestic abuse, strangulation, and suffocation. And again, once again, also the other one, intimidation of a victim. According to the Brown, I'm just reading this report because I want to make sure I get this 100% right. I don't want to say anything else that could be misguided. According to Brown County Jail records, the strangulation and suffocation charge is a felony, with the other 4 charges that are misdemeanors. According to records, he is being withheld without bond. The Hobart Lawrence PD was dispatched to the alleged disturbance involving Jacobs on Saturday. Statement that's been released says this remains an active and ongoing investigation. No further information will be released at this time, and that is all we have there. This is through Josh Jacobs' attorneys, who are denying the allegations, saying here, quote, Josh vehemently denies the allegations. This matter is in early stages of investigation with important evidence that has not yet been made public. We ask for fairness and restraint while the judicial process takes its course. Packers say they are aware of what is happening involving the legal matter with Jacobs. And they say, as it is an ongoing legal situation, we will withhold further comment. Josh Jacobs, of course, obviously a star. He had 14 touchdowns last year, 13 rushing, total of over 1,200 yards in 15 games. He's been a star with the Raiders. He's, of course, obviously been a star with the Packers as well. And this is a massive story. And, this is a story that's going to potentially have huge ripple effects. Not just the Green Bay Packers, of course, but, of course, in the NFC and in the NFL, because he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. But beyond any other commentary about football in regards to this, let's hope that maybe what's being reported is not what is seen. His attorney or his agent, whoever it was, made that his attorney, said that there's evidence that's not been presented yet, not been made public. That's important to the case. So, with all cases, of course, you are innocent to proven guilty, and the legal process has to go through the process. So, and I hope that this stuff isn't true. I hope this is not what happened with Josh Jacobs. But of course, if we are dealing with another instance of domestic violence, all prayers to the victim and all prayers to survivors who see stories like this or hear the story from me. Apologies for not having a trigger warning. Probably should have mentioned that right before I started talking. But who will hear these stories and hear this and be reminded of terrible things. So it's a huge story in the NFL. We'll continue to follow. If I see any updates prior to the time this episode is over, I will certainly bring them to you. But that is a big story out of the NFL right now. Josh Jacobs arrested on domestic violence charges. Again, one of those charges involving strangulation, which is a felony. So very serious stuff there happening in the NFL. So before we get out of here, man, again, I do want to talk about this stuff with the Giants. But once again, remind all folks that you're watching and listening to I almost said Orange and Blues. I host too many damn shows. You are watching 40 Days and Counting. A show that I do 2 live stream shows per day. 2 per week, rather. One on Tuesdays, which we started here at 6 p.m. One, of course, 8 a.m. on Fridays. We do this twice a week. It started as a 40 Days and 40 Nights, where I did 40 straight days of weekdays, 2 shows per day. Was not going to do 2 shows per day, because that's insane. We pared it down to 2 shows per week, but we have kept the night and day thing going, where we do 1 night show on Tuesday and then 1 day show or morning show at 8 a.m. on Fridays. We're streaming live multiple spots, including on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can do me a favor, give me a like. If you can comment in the comment section, and make sure you subscribe to the channel where we're streaming live, which is New Generation Media. NU Generation Media is the place you want to follow. We greatly, greatly, greatly would appreciate that support, of course. If you're watching, of course, on X, you can find me, EJ_Stewart there. That's where I'm at on X. While you're there, like this video, comment in the comment section. If you have any comments, anything we talked about, you can always, of course, be a part of the show by getting in the chat that we have here, a live chat, both on Instagram, Action EJ, on X, EJ_Stewart, and on YouTube, New Generation Media. Also streaming live on Buzzer. Make sure you download and sign up for the Buzzer app, BZZR. All sports, no frills. Really fun sports content space being created. And I'm really excited about the future we have over there at Buzzer. So make sure you lock in there. We're streaming live here at 40 Days and Counting. We'll also have a new episode of Difference Makers, my draft show that I do with Kendall. That will be on Thursday on Buzzer. So you want to make sure you sign up for Buzzer. Again, just search BZZR at your app store, and then download the app. Make sure you sign up, and you're all set, man. It's a really fun, cool place. Shout out to the folks, by the way, watch me on Instagram. I got the list here because I kept it up. We got we got Angela in the chat. Shout out to Angela. Angela's watching. Former New York One colleague. Nice to see her. Or Andrea. I'm sorry, Andrea. I think is her name. We got MNS20045. We got Matt Orms in the chat. We got my guy Ray Jarvis. Shout out to Ray. He joined me in a little bit. He was watching for a little bit. Shout out to him. And Stacey Albin. Shout out to you. Shout out for checking me out on Instagram. Again, we greatly appreciate it. We're streaming live there. So, of course, again, if you want to watch these shows, you can catch me on Instagram. Action EJ is where you'll find me there. So, last thing before we get out of here. And again, this has been a fun one so far. Last story is a little bit of a downer. This one's kind of a downer, too. But, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about what's going on with the New York Giants and with Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart. So, as of right now, it seems like all is well that ends well, at least for now. If you guys did not see, on Friday, Jackson Dart was at a political rally. He's the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. He was their former first-round pick last year. He was at a political rally for a congressman, Mike Lawler, a local congressman. I believe he's Long Island, but I'm not 100% sure. But he's a local guy in the New York area. And President Trump was there to boost his support in the race that he's in. And President Trump reached out to Jackson Dart wanting to be introduced by him. And Jackson Dart agreed. Jackson Dart was at this rally. He introduced Donald Trump. And they obviously had the photo op and everything. And it was ended up being a huge story. Just because anything involving the president and this particular president becomes very polarizing. It becomes a big story. Just the reality of where we are in American politics and where we are with Donald Trump as a American figure and as a political figure. And that led to all different kind of commentary from people outside, which if it was just people outside, I really wouldn't probably be bringing this up on the show, because Jackson Dart will not be the first nor the last pro athlete to voice support for President Trump. And that's his right. This is a free country, First Amendment, and in fact, we should encourage all people to be engaged in the political process. It became a story when his fellow second-year first-round pick, Abdul Carter, went on social media and voiced his displeasure with it. He posted a post, quote tweeting Jackson Dart introducing President Trump, and said, "I thought this was AI. What are we doing?" Clearly speaking to his displeasure with Jackson Dart putting himself in a position to introduce President Trump. And I've talked about this a little bit in various different locations, and I'll say it here. I'm not at all really interested in a conversation about a policy or the job performance of Donald Trump or anything like that in a very strong political sense, because that's not what this show is about. It's never been what the shows that I do are about, and I don't think it's actually really the point. My point is to speak to what I think was a misstep by the quarterback Jackson Dart, if his goal is to put the Giants in the best situation to be successful. And regardless of what you think politically, whether you think Donald Trump is the worst and he's terrible and you hate him, or you think that Donald Trump is the greatest thing that this has happened to this country and you're fully invested in supporting the president, when you're a starting quarterback in the NFL and you are leading players with all walks of life, there needs to be a consideration for how the rest of your teammates and how the locker room that you lead, how they view movements you make away from the field. Now, if you want to make the case, which plenty of people will, and they have, and they will continue to, that, listen, it's the President of the United States, whether you like him, whether you not like him, it's a huge honor to be invited by the President of the United States, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to take that opportunity. If that is your stance, that is fine, and I think it's a fair stance to have. It's once again still not really quite what I'm talking about. Or rather, if you take that stance, that's okay, but then you can also have to then relent the truth, which is that then he was not interested in what was best for the Giants or what was best for his locker room. That's the truth of it. Because whatever you think of Donald Trump, the reality is, and I'm speaking, I always say when I do this show, this is the most authentic version of EJ you get. Though I feel like any show I do, I'm always keeping it 100, of course. Regardless of how you look at the president, a lot of folks from Abdul Carter's walk of life, young black men, Abdul Carter also appears to have some Muslim faith potentially. Perhaps I know people have posted pictures of his draft night in a very Islamophobic way, but showed pictures of people, women that were in his draft party with the hijab on. So maybe there's Muslims in the family. Maybe he's a Muslim. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not with that. All I know is that it is not a surprise, or it is not uncommon for people with the profile of Abdul Carter to not love the president and feel extremely strongly about him in a negative way. And which is why I feel like, again, Jackson Dart missed the mark here, man. This quarterback, to me, has a little bit of a problem wanting to be seen. I think this quarterback has a little bit of a problem wanting to be a celebrity. And I don't feel like I'm living in 1985 when I talk about sports, but there is a part of me that does firmly believe in the Bill Parcells adage that you don't really want a celebrity quarterback. The quarterback that is too invested in wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard and wanting to bring a lot of flash, perhaps won't bring the most substance and won't have the right mindset and the right focus involved. Because somebody, whether it was him or somebody in his team, should have realized, as great an honor as he may think it is, and maybe it is, in your world it is, this is something that was going to be divisive. This was something that was going to ruffle feathers in the locker room. And at the end of the day, you need Abdul Carter. That's the truth. If the Giants are going to win a lot of games, if they're going to get out of the doldrums and become a playoff contender yet again, they're going to need Jackson Dart to throw for 4,000 plus yards and be a star quarterback and live up to the potential that we have seen in flashes. And they're going to need Abdul Carter to rack up 8 to 12 sacks and be a menace rushing the passer. And sometimes what that means as a leader is you have to make personal sacrifices. And sometimes that may mean this appearance that would be cool or I would be great or would be an honor. I maybe can't do that thing because I'm the quarterback. That was one thing that was missing out of this. Is man, if this was an offensive lineman, if this was the punter, if this was a safety who went and introduced President Trump, this thing is not a story. And even Abdul Carter talking about it still wouldn't have made a story. It wouldn't have been that big a deal. The reality is the rules are different for quarterbacks. It's just the truth. And for Donald Trump, it's not just politics as usual. And that's not a commentary on how good he is as a president or how bad he is as a president. It's just how people respond to him. And it's not out of nowhere. It's not by accident. This is someone who just recently posted a picture of the former black president and the former first lady as monkeys. And this is a young black man. It's again, we could live in a reality world. We live in a fantasy world where it's oh, it's just a president. We all got to respect it. No, there are some people who will see some of the actions that the president has taken, and they don't just see it as a political disagreement. They see it as a moral bankruptcy in how he relates to people's humanity. And it gets much deeper than that. And if you're Jackson Dart, that's just something you got to take in consideration, whether you like him or not. It does not mean necessarily that Jackson Dart, just like any person that supports a politician or just shows up to something. That's the funny thing about this whole thing. We don't really know Jackson Dart's personal beliefs. That's one of the funny things I've heard about this commentary that people have had. Oh, Jackson Dart, all he was doing was standing up for his political beliefs. What are they? I have no idea. There was nothing in that speech he gave that was political. He just said, oh, wow, this is crazy. I'm happy to be here. Joining me now is the President of the United States. That was it. I don't know what his politics are. Which is why I went back to the point about I think this quarterback likes to be seen a lot. This is a guy who I see him on on streams. I see him with this streamer. I see him with this model and that model and on this page 6 story. And I'm like, I'm seeing this guy a lot. I'm seeing him a lot. And it's not like this guy in his first year lit the world on fire. It's not like the Giants won a ton of games. They were terrible. They blew leads. He had a stretch for several weeks in a row where the Giants were putting together some of the worst offensive performances in the team's history. The game they played against the Vikings late in the season in the cold weather was one of the worst offensive performances a team has ever had in playing for Big Blue. One of the worst quarterback performances a team has ever had playing for the Giants. Like, that's the truth. So you don't get. There's a certain leeway maybe you have if you're a Joe Burrow who has taken a picture with the president, but taking his team to a Super Bowl, has been an All-Pro, has been a superstar, right? Like, there's not going to be same questions about his leadership or whether whatever baggage he may bring with the willingness to stand next to someone who elicits such strong responses. The reality is he's Joe Burrow. Like, people are going to overlook whatever political difference or political agreement they have with him if they think he's going to throw 5,000 yards next year. It's the truth. Jackson Dart hasn't done that yet, which is why I go back to the issues I've had with this and why I thought it was a mistake. And, it is telling who becomes, for some folks, who becomes allowed to speak about political aspects and political beliefs and who isn't. Jackson Dart took plenty of heat, and I'm not, again, criticizing him for liking President Trump. That's not my place. But he took a lot of people who criticize him for liking Donald Trump and for supporting Donald Trump for reasons, and some of those reasons, they have merit. Not necessarily in terms of like, oh, I think that ICE is good or bad or anything like that, but just in terms of just like, again, some moral things I think that we kind of can separate from politics. But that's not really my place. My more is about, again, what's better for the team. But it is interesting how, for those who did defend Jackson Dart, it was, well, he's allowed to have political beliefs and this is fine and whatever. But when Abdul Carter voices his displeasure with someone's political beliefs that's very important to him, that became the huge issue. And I thought Lawrence Times had an idiotic post on social media where he's like, oh, Abdul Carter wanting to get attention. I'm like, you think Abdul Carter wanted to kick the hornet's nest of challenging the star quarterback of his team? Or quarterback, we don't know if he's a star yet. The starting quarterback, the face of the franchise of his team, on a political issue. You really think that that's what he wanted? You really think he woke up that morning, oh, this is an opportunity for me? You're a moron if you think that. You're an absolute idiot. That's not what he wanted. That's not what he cared about. That's not what any of us want. Nobody wants to enter that arena. He felt compelled, just like Jackson Dart felt compelled, because of whatever he believes as a person. But the original action started with Jackson Dart. Like, he was the guy that was seeking attention. He's the guy that wanted to introduce the president. He was the guy that wanted that look. So when we talk about, again, his political beliefs, we don't know what they are. I don't know if this was a overly political thing. I don't think it was. I don't know Jackson Dart personally. I don't know what his ideas are. But I've never seen him make any cases for what he believes is the direction for the country or what his values are as a American. He doesn't talk about that. But I know what's very consistent. He likes to be seen. He likes to be next to the right person that could. He likes the spotlight. That he does like. That to me is very consistent with everything else I've seen from him. And the other stuff, maybe not quite as damaging, but this one was. Now, it seemed like they called and they squashed it, and hopefully this is the case. And the reality is that Jackson Dart continues to be the leader that he has purported it to be. There was a funny video that was posted. What was it? It was today, I think. I guess they have a practice or OTAs or whatever, and they showed Francis Mauigoa, CC Mauigoa, the first round pick for the Giants. He gave Jackson Dart a gift, and he was filming him. So Jackson Dart's opening the gift, and he sees that it's a Miami jersey, so he's already kind of laughing. He's like, okay, here we go. But not only was it a Miami jersey, the Miami Hurricanes, that is, CC Mauigoa went to the U. It was a Miami Jackson Dart jersey with the Fiesta Bowl patch on it. If you remember last year, Miami beat Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl on a game winner from Carson Beck running it in, a devastating loss. And that's when Jackson Dart threw the thing on the floor and walked away. It was a very funny clip. So I don't know. Like, I mean, does that mean the locker room's great or there's stewardship? I have no idea. But that was a funny clip. And again, Aaron Abdul-Carter said they talked about it and it's fine. I know various different players from the Giants have said, "Oh, there's not going to be an issue in the locker room." People can say that. We won't really know until they start losing games. We won't really know until we continue to see this play out. Like, it's not really going to be. There's a potential for where this could just have been a problem and remain a problem, but we really won't know if it's an issue for months and months and months of time later, and really maybe for even years. It's not an answer that's going to be solved today. But just know, for folks that are thinking about, what was wrong, what was the issue with Jackson Dart doing what he did, it's like, if you decide to hitch your wagon in that very public way next to this political figure, you're just going to elicit a lot of very strong responses from folks who aren't from the same walks of life as you, and it's just the truth. You could decide that you don't care about that, and what was important to you was getting that opportunity with the president, and that's your prerogative, and that's fine. But there was a lot of like, it shouldn't be a big deal. I'm like, who gives a crap about what should or what shouldn't be? Man, we live in reality. We live in 2026. This is not the George H.W. Bush administration. This is not Ronald Reagan. This is not Jimmy Carter. We don't live in a time where like everybody is just, even if you have political differences, we all are kind of rooting for America, or like we all kind of have some respect for the presidency. That time is long gone. It's especially gone when it comes to talking about Donald Trump. And that's the truth. If you live in a world where you're in your bubble and you think this guy is like the greatest of all time, and the people that hate him, they just hate him for no reason, like it's like you're not living in the reality. And that's what sucks about this world, is that the truth of the matter is you can live in whatever world you want. That's what's so crazy about this world, is if you want to say, hey, I don't want to hear the political opinions I like, you can find that wherever you are, and the algorithm will keep you there. If you want to say, I want to find only the political opinions I hate, you can find that, and your algorithm will keep you there. You can find whatever you want. You want to live in a world where you can literally change your world view, or just the life you live in terms of AI and all the different mechanisms we have now to actually escape from what is real. I think it has made people, when they talk about issues that are important to them, or issues that come up that become important to their identity, they think, oh, well, I've only heard everything I've heard, and in my perspective is the only perspective that's out there. It's like, it's not, man. It's not. Just like any person that decided, I want to take a picture or do whatever, or introduce any leftist or Democrat politician. You're taking a risk. You're taking a massive risk. Nothing is like Donald Trump. He could have done this with any other Republican. It would not have been the same strong response. I guarantee you. It's the Donald Trump thing. But either way, it's the same thing. If someone says, I want to introduce this Democrat or this whatever, there are going to be people who are going to be really mad about that. And it's up to you to decide, hey, do I care about that? And what's the reaction for my team in terms of how that's going to be felt? The truth of the matter is there's something deeply personal about how people feel about Donald Trump in a negative way, and people like Abdul Carter. And those are the people that are in Jackson Dart's locker room. There are a ton of people who love Donald Trump in his locker room. That's every NFL locker room. That's just America. There are a lot of people who love Donald Trump. But there are people who don't. And if sometimes when you're in the bubble of thinking everybody loves him, or everybody accepts the presidency office, it leads you to think, oh, well, it's them who are the problem, not me. You're a CEO of an organization, man. You need everybody involved to buy into your leadership. If you're doing anything that's going to put that in jeopardy, you're making a mistake. And I hope Jackson Dart learned from this a little bit, that it's not just about him. It's not just about the looks he wants. It's about the greater goal of helping the Giants as a team. And now we're gonna have to really see what kind of leader John Harbaugh is. Because John Harbaugh, this is his kind of first locker room crisis. He hasn't made a public comment yet. I can't wait to hear what he's gonna say about this. I really can't, because truth be told, if you follow John Harbaugh, you follow the Harbaugh family, the sentiments in terms of how they would view the president, very positive, very, very much in that ilk. And that's not a commentary whether that's right or wrong. I doesn't care. It's just the truth. But again, there's truth about what Donald Trump means to certain people in a negative light, and it includes John Harbaugh's players. Again, how he responds to this and how he devies who's right and who's wrong, or how he does it, it's a big thing. I really am fascinated to see how he handles this Dart Carter situation. That's where we're going to leave it, man. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days and Counting. Again, of course, if you enjoyed this episode, you can always find me every Tuesday, 6 p.m., Friday, 8 a.m., of course. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, ActionEJ. Shout out to CubbyBear21 on Instagram. That's funny. Again, I have my comment thing up, but sometimes my comments don't come through, which is annoying. But CubbyBear21 commented because I have my actual Instagram up so I can see it. EJ, we miss you on Maggie and Perloff. I tell you this, man. Shout out to Cubby Bear. Thank you for watching my show and checking me out today. I feel like today's version of Maggie and Perloff would have been generational. I really love what I've been able to do since the Maggie and Perloff show ended in the iteration it did end on Infinity Sports Network with the whole station going poof. But there are several days where you're like, oh man, this is the kind of day where I would love to be on national airwaves or working on a show on national airwaves. And there have been several days, after the Super Bowl, different days throughout this whole time. This is probably the number one day so far where like, oh, would this episode of Maggie and Perloff today would have been amazing. Between me and Manny Rodriguez, my brother, celebrating a Knicks finals appearance, the saltiness and excuses that would have came out of Andrew Perloff, Bogish, and just the disgust of seeing Manny Rodriguez and myself happy about the Knicks. And then Maggie kind of just like playing this middle game of trying to play quarterback amongst all of these idiots who are talking back and forth and trying to keep the show back on track, while also being like, oh, by the way, I'm banned from the Garden. This just would have been the show to listen to, the show to watch on YouTube and on Twitch. This would have been amazing. And, and trust me, our group chat was lit. There was several funny conversations back and forth. There may have been a comment. It was not from me. A comment from the other Knicks fan on the show that was like, I'm going to name my future kid Landry Shamet. To which there was a response from Guess Who of why would you name your kid after a former Sixer? I think you can guess who mentioned that comment. So the group chat was already hilarious for the Maggie and Perloff fans listening to the show, watching the show today, here on 40 Days and Counting. And this is one of those days I'm like, man, I miss the crew, I miss the team, I miss the community, the Weedos and coffee drinkers. I know some of you guys still rock with me here on 40 Days and Counting. This show would have been a show. This would have been one of those when we do our year ender where we play all the favorite clips from the show. I guarantee you something from that today's episode would have made it 100%. And I'm only imagining however this ends, whether it's a Knicks championship or a Knicks losing in the finals, that episode would also have been generational as well. So these are the times where I miss the team. But thank you, Cubby Bear, for the kind words. And yes, I also miss the Maggie and Perloff show, and I miss the Beatles and Coffee Drinkers. I miss all you guys. And make sure you follow all of the crew, right? Even if we're not all together, it doesn't mean that, hey, we're not all supporting each other in one way or another or as a group. And doesn't mean you still shouldn't follow what they're doing. Perloff's doing awesome stuff with Athlon. Bogus doing some stuff with Sirius. Maggie has big ideas, big plans coming for her career. She's doing great stuff over at SNY. Manny, awesome commentary. Of course, he does play-by-play for Stepanak. Of course, that season's over, but Manny doing awesome stuff. Make sure you follow all of them. Make sure you continue to support all of them. It's like, even if we're not together, in many ways, we still are a team. And, it's like I've seen folks say, sometimes, even if we're not together, it's like we're still trying to dominate in our field other places. It's like we're still, in some ways, very linked. So, I'm very happy to see that comment before I got out of here. I'm glad I'm able to see my comments again. I hope I'm not getting YouTube comments, because I got nothing. I see 0 here. But I saw an Instagram comment come through that did not show up in my software comment section. So shout out to you guys. Thank you guys for checking me out again. this has been 40 days and counting, man. So if you want to, again, make sure you follow on X, EJ_Stewart, Instagram, Action EJ, TikTok, Action EJ, and of course, Buzzer, EJ205 Prep. And be sure, of course, to subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media. That'll do it for now. Enjoy Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. I'll be back live Thursday night on Buzzer, 6 p.m. That'll be our NBA Draft Show, Difference Makers. We'll also, of course, have 4 days and counting once again. 8 a.m. Friday morning. 8 a.m. Friday morning. And I'm sure there'll be an Orange and Blue Bloods thrown in there somewhere. We'll see. That's going to do it for now. I want to thank you guys so much. I'm EJ Stewart. See you guys later.